Today, a pod in 2 chapters. Chapter 1, CNN is getting out of the media criticism business after 30 years. Then Chapter 2, Adam Nueman's staggering meltdown with WeWork doesn't seem to have tarnished his brand in Silicon Valley not one bit. So what is the real story about his new startup, Flow? And is the HBO drama all you need to know about Nueman, or is there more to the story? I am Steven Rosenbaum. This is Future Forward, and Bob Garfield joins us again this week. Hi, Bob.
Hi, Steven, which I've never called you before, ever. When did you start using the N?
I use the N on book titles, on book covers.
Okay.
It's my professional nom de whatever. Anyway.
Well, I'm going to enjoy this to the nth degree.
Yes. So, all right, let's just start with the Stelter thing. So, on one hand, it's a surprise, and on the other hand, it's kind of not. I mean, Fox News happily puts on their page, he sealed his own fate. Now, there are changes going on at CNN. We know this. I guess the thing that I'm puzzled by is why they would both cancel the show and cancel him. It seems like those are different moves.
Yeah, so I'm so glad that you asked me to discuss this with you because, I've always made the joke that I will speak authoritatively about subjects that I don't really understand, and this is the epitome because I don't know what happened. I know some things that may have a bearing on what happened. For example, the ratings were not good. I don't think it was a highly profitable program for CNN. And the new owners, Warner Brothers Discovery, have shown that they are not interested in devoting their air to something that's going to be unprofitable or marginally profitable, even in the medium term. You may recall that they killed CNN Plus or CNN exclamation. Right. I don't know what the hell it was called, which they had spent untold millions of dollars setting up a streaming service, hired all sorts of talent. I think it was on the stream for 5 minutes, and then they just shut it all down. They said, nope, we're not going to do this. And over on the entertainment side, at the HBO Max side of things, the same crowd of people is canceling scripted dramas and comedies and dramedies in favor of Discovery, unscripted reality-like programming. So they part of this issue may be tolerance for unprofitability, of which they've shown to have zero. A part of it, if you're asking me, could be the backlash that the owners have felt to the fact that Stelter decided, not too late in the game relative to others in the mainstream media, to start calling out Trump and the Republicans on all manner of lies and deceptions and propaganda and various kinds of scoundrel-like behavior, and being forthright about it and not letting up, which, as far as I'm concerned, good for them. But of course, the right, once presented with the smoking gun evidence, says, aha, it's bias. The media are biased. They say the media is biased, but in any case, the key word is biased. And of course, telling the truth is not a sign of bias. It is a sign of telling the truth. And unfortunately, that is an unwinnable situation. And it's probably concerned the new owners since before they actually took the keys to the shop.
So all of the Brian tea leaf reading notwithstanding, the thing that I guess interests me is, if you ran a restaurant, you would probably not include in your menu criticism of your and other neighborhood restaurants. If you ran a shoe store, you'd probably not criticize shoe stores. So there's always been kind of a built-in uncomfort in people in the media business being media critics, and it required CNN to be somewhat Teflon and be willing to, they did. I mean, the fact that they did reliable sources for 30 years, I guess what I'm trying to get to, just not to be too blunt about it, is this a sign of a larger retrenchment for media critics, or is this just CNN firing Brian Stelter and using closing off the show as as an excuse?
Well, that's a good question. It's always been uncomfortable for the media criticism to take place in the media, but where else does it take place? In that shoe store or restaurant that you were talking about? I mean, it is almost by definition something that will be platformed by a medium, whether it's a newspaper or a magazine or a cable channel or what have you. That's where programming lives. So that's a structural problem. I can tell you that CNN gave editorial license to Brian and his team. There wasn't a whole lot of criticism about CNN on his show, or in his certainly not his predecessor's show. That's the Howie Kurtz version of it, which was just a waste of oxygen for all concerned. But it is a problem. And CNN, I must say, as a media critic myself, is absolutely the worst news organization, except for Fox, to deal with when you've got them by the short and curlies. They simply will not cooperate with any kind of question. It goes through this gauntlet of PR people. I remember once I was in the White House press room, and I was doing a piece on the media about covering the new administration, Trump, and I wanted to talk to Jim Acosta, and he was willing to do it, and but he says, I've got to check with my management, and I said, oh, you do? Well, listen, it's great chatting with you. Well, perhaps we'll meet again someday. Well, sure enough, he was sitting there on his phone and talking to his management, and they said, it's a hard no. It's a hard no.
Hard no.
So I mean, the inherent hypocrisy of that is manifest. But what can you do? They're a very sensitive corporation.
Well, and just so long as we're opening this can of worms, you have been a guest on Reliable Sources.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And how did that go?
I've been there a couple of times. The last time I may have done I may have done myself some damage. We were talking. I'm assuming I was there to talk about Trump, but I don't really remember the talk. The honest to goodness, Steve, I can't think of words. The premise of the segment, right? But I do remember referring to CNN as a news-like cable channel, which is,
Brian,
I think, a pretty good
that was
characterization. He didn't think it was all that. I mean, he didn't demonstrate to me that he thought it was witty and hilarious and accurate. He was kind of one of those. And but anyway, we finished the segment without injuries. I remember I put my arm on him as I was talking about that, and I think he may have been reacting to the uncomfortable touching. Yeah.
So
did I say I put my arm on him? That actually has a different meaning. I put my hand on his arm is what I'm trying to say. So it was a portion of my arm on another portion of his arm, and together there was some arm touching.
With any luck, we will have an image that we can share with the video viewers of this podcast. So let's play the game. So Brian, first of all, one other thing, which is that some of our listeners will know that Reliable Sources actually did a daily newsletter that I thought was extraordinarily well done, very tightly written, quite relevant, quite expansive, and came at 11 o'clock at night, just as you were winding down after a long day of imbibing in all of the media. And then, of course, you got worked up because it sent you down a rabbit hole of various sorts. That being said, I found it to be a really good, maybe the best media newsletter that I read. And now theoretically, his co-writer is going to keep it up. He's going to take some time off, and then they're going to relaunch it. Oliver Darcy. And I like his writing, but he's not as, I don't know. I think I'll miss Brian's voice in the newsletter. So, and I had hoped he would take it with him into some Substack world. So maybe he will. Well, here. So let's play the game. So Brian is now officially somewhat startled and unemployed. Any guess who would? Is there a bidding war going on for his talent?
I doubt it. I mean, let's look at the obvious possibility, MSNBC. But MSNBC has had every opportunity to start a competing media criticism program over the last 40 years, and they've opted not to do that. Probably for the profitability reasons that I was discussing. But again, I'm just speculating. I have no idea. So, assuming they're not going to suddenly change their minds, and though they might, because Brian's a star. That seems to be the obvious potential cable venue. The other is that thing that
Smith is doing. Yeah.
Well, no, okay. Well, there's Ben Smith's outfit, which I don't know if it has any video component or not. I thought it was just a website, and then there's the cable or streaming outfit that Andrew Cuomo just signed on with. Not Andrew Cuomo. Is it Andrew? What's the brother, the cable host? One was the governor.
Not Andrew. Not Chris. Chris.
Yeah, Chris Cuomo just signed on with them. So I suppose that's a possibility, though, I don't know. Other than that,
but wait. So let's remember it wasn't that long ago that Brian was a writer at the Times. So you're presuming that his telegenicness means he must remain on camera. I'm sure he feels that way.
I was thinking of him wanting to probably keep the kind of money that he was getting as a host and media editor at CNN versus whatever he was getting paid at the New York Times. But even if he wants to go into print again, if it's true that CNN's going to keep the Reliable Sources newsletter and have Oliver Darcy write it, they kind of have that locked up. And they do a very good job. As you said, it's expansive. It's easy to digest because it is a digest. And they've got 100 trillion subscribers for the free product. So I don't know who's going to take a flyer on a competing newsletter just because there's the benefit of Brian's name. He's the king of a very, very, very tiny kingdom. And it's not a kingdom of riches. It's not sitting atop a reservoir of oil. It's sitting atop a reservoir of mostly red ink. And who knows? I suspect that he may rethink what exactly he wants to do for a living.
Yeah. So here's career advice for Brian, who I'm sure is listening. I think it would be time to ditch the media critic piece of his, CV, and just, I think it would be worthwhile for MS to give him some kind of a trial run as a flat out talk show host, in a left leaning cable network where he, that's been where he's dined out the most. And he might actually be better if he wasn't having to frame everything inside a media frame.
Yeah, it's a bit confining.
All right. Let's move on to WeWork. So first of all, have you ever been in a WeWork or rented a WeWork or been
I haven't rented one, but I've worked for a publication that moved its offices into a WeWork on like 47th Street.
And what was your sense of it? Did you feel the flow? Did you feel the?
I'm sorry. I've just made an egregious error. I think it's 43rd Street. Do I still get to do this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, nobody's Googling the street address of your unnamed startup. So I have a confession to make.
Uh-huh.
As a lifelong technologist, media guy who reads voraciously, not only did I not follow 99% of the WeWork funding growth meltdown drama, but I truly didn't give a shit. Like I didn't find it interesting. I didn't lean into it. I wouldn't have known Adam Nueman if he walked down the street barefoot in front of me. Like knew nothing about it, even after it melted down, and didn't really care because, whatever. That being said, I don't know why, but it was late one night and I was having trouble sleeping, and I wandered around HBO Max and almost trepidatiously clicked on We Crashed, which struck me as a terrible title for a show I did not care about, and found it almost immediately quite entertaining. So I consumed it, as people are known to do, fairly quickly. I don't know, it was 6 or 8 episodes, and I think I watched them in 2 days. But it was essentially everything I knew about Adam Nueman and his wife and their story and WeWork and the failure. And as I was at a event the other night, someone was talking about that show and a fact in it, and regaling people with this fact as if it was a truth. And that was what led me to, well, before we get to his new thing, I was like, wait, I've not read the book. I don't know anything about what actually happened, except the HBO based on a true story film, which I assume is 15% fiction, 20% fiction, 40% fiction, but not a documentary, not a news program. And that made me think about Oliver Stone. Like, at what point do I have?
Speaking of speculating about shit you don't really understand, here's a guy who's made a career of imagining narratives that suit his worldview, irrespective of whether they're plausible or disparaging or anything that might give a more responsible director caution. But yeah.
Now, to be fair, they went out of their way to cast characters that looked like the characters. So Jared Leto versus Adam Nueman. I have to say, Jared Leto, more handsome. Yeah,
they're both pretty good-looking fellers.
In terms of Anne Hathaway versus Rebecca Nueman, you got to go for Anne Hathaway. But what's interesting is even as you go down the scroll of faces, they cast essentially everyone in this fact-ish film to look like the characters, which isn't, so these are, these are not accidents. That being said, there were some facts in it that I did not know. So, for example, did I know that Adam Newman's wife, Rebecca Paltrow, is actually, related to what's her face? Paltrow,
Gwyneth,
actress. Gwyneth. Did not know that. Didn't know her last name. I guess I didn't know who she was. But they tell that. So as I'm thinking about it, things where they use real people's names, they probably can't be casual about. They probably have to get the basic familial relationship accurate. If they made a film about Bob Garfield, they couldn't say that you were cousins with, Paul Newman. Although maybe you are. Or do you know? Are you cousins with Paul?
Very distant.
Distant, yeah. Okay, so then you could. There were some other. I'll tell you the fact that was the most startling to me, and this was the one that came up in the cocktail party I was at the other night. That the money that came from hold on.
SoftBank.
Yeah, the SoftBank money, which I thought was the money in the room that actually funded the massive growth. Actually, the SoftBank money came from the Saudi money, which I did not know.
Yeah, well, there were two tranches. I think they were original investors. When I think Andreessen Horowitz was one, and they figure into this news story, and I think SoftBank had a big chunk. But then, when this company, which had reached a valuation of something like $44 billion, began to spiral downward, SoftBank came in with another $9 billion or some crazy sum of money to keep the thing afloat. To say that Nueman had overextended is the understatement of all times. But I did not know that was Saudi money.
Yeah. So I guess the way the non-factual or pseudo-factual film plays it, he was set up in a meeting with Prince, one of the Saudi money prince, and he's an hour and a half late and shows up barefoot and hungover, and the Saudis then go back to SoftBank and say, we're pulling the plug. We're not giving you the money to give him. Mm-hmm. And so that was really his downfall. But I always thought that the SoftBank money was, I guess I never knew where it came from. But
nor
maybe everything comes from oil money at the end of the day. So this is the Entertainment Weekly story that I'm essentially asking you to comment on, which is, like, if every news event generates a based on a real story, fast turnaround, high profile streaming thing, not a doc, like, how do you ask the audience to discern between fact and fiction?
Well, it's a tough one. And the nearer you are to contemporaneous events, the more confusing it is, right? I think you can take a whole lot more liberties doing it based on a true story if the true story took place during World War II than if you're talking about what was in the headlines of Fortune magazine. Does it still exist? Yeah, I think it does. And the Wall Street Journal just 4 years ago. So it's nobody seems to mind in Hollywood. They I think a very significant percentage of streaming series has the based on a true story premise, including, funnily enough, what was the name of that the show about Anna?
Russian woman. Yep. With the glasses.
And it was a similar, based on the shit show of actual events, including her legal case and her really, really, really long con over New York investment banking people and all of her friends and acquaintances. But Anthony Edwards, the character actor, was in that as one of the bankers, and he's in this this Adam Nueman movie too. Yeah. And the name of one of the companies that Anna, whatever her name is, was connected with, because the guy was her boyfriend for a while in the movie, was Flow, FLOW, and that's the name of Newman's new company, which Andreessen Horowitz is giving him more than $1,000 trillion
so
as investment.
So back to my research I did at the cocktail party the other night. The one thing I heard was
the rigor that we bring to this show, Steve. I hope is impressive to the audience.
I will say the vodka was delicious, but there was no fruit, which made me a little sad.
I'm sorry.
Just a little fruit would have been nice. So the Adam Nueman Newco, the one thing that cocktail party friend said to me is, it's really not fair to say that he's essentially taking the same knuckleheads out to fleece them yet again, because actually when he was done fleecing the first knuckleheads, he had all this huge amount of cash that he got as a buyout. And he's actually been buying real estate for Flow with his own money. So
Right, mostly in Florida, like the beach cities in Florida, which I find extremely fascinating. So tell me if I've got this right. He's buying up these apartments, or apartment buildings, right? And he's going to take this, essentially a chain. He's going to bring to bear concierge service and other kind of amenities to give a branded look and feel to all of these properties, to make it a better experience for the young people who have not a hope in the world of ever owning their dwelling. And he's not only going to do it for the properties he owns, but he's going to sell the same service to other landlords and say, "Do you want to, have a flow branding? We're available to be your
I have
manager."
a theory. Yeah. So my theory is renting apartments sucks, and it sucks in New York particularly hard. It's a miserable process that they treat you badly. You make down payments, you lose it. And so if he can build a space that's somewhere between miserable apartment rental and overpriced hotel room, and say to reasonably well-off young people, hey, listen, check in, don't worry about any of the paperwork, don't worry about apartment, like, well, it'll be a branded, like, to me, it's kind of like a adult dorm life. It's dormish in its, and there'll be people like you, because we'll only let people in that are.
Well, WeWork was that. WeWork
Yeah.
was kind of a work dorm, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they had a keg set up on every floor, and it was designed. The amenities were designed to appeal to the younger employees who tended to work there. So that's consistent. But I got a question for you, Steve.
Wait. Go
ahead.
I got to. So according to the HBO documentary, the WeWork office space had something that they called a fuck closet, and they displayed its use in the film on numerous occasions.
All right. Well, it doesn't not make sense.
No, it actually doesn't not make sense.
So if you were an investment banker, right, and someone came to you with this familiar sounding idea, but new to the rental property marketplace, which is enormous, and they said, yeah, and we're snapping up apartments in Miami and where else, like Daytona Beach and elsewhere on the east coast of Florida. And you were investing hundreds of millions of dollars, presumably for the long term. Might not you say you're buying property in a place where the tide and the sea levels are going up, 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 up? So this is some billions of dollars in maybe the most vulnerable real estate in America. I don't understand that bet.
I would just put in the budget the cost of stilts, and add into that a rehab price where once every 10 years you have to go in and lift them up a little and crank the stilts up. Now, I thought you were going to say something different, which is, why does Andreessen Horowitz, there's a thing worth saying about Andreessen Horowitz, which is, when you've got the kind of money that they have to put to work, and you've got LPs that, like LPs, if you said to your LPs, hey, listen, good news, we took all the money you gave us and we did nothing with it this quarter, and next quarter we're thinking we might do nothing with it again, that makes people unhappy. So you've got this huge pile of cash, and you really can't do 50, a million here, a million there, because you have to manage those investments and go to the board meetings and read the paperwork. So they're having to, part of being a really big, venture fund with really big LP money to manage is you have to put it to work. And so, the thing is, there are no points off for failing big. And the subset of that is, look, we're going to make 10 great big bets. 8 of them are going to crash and burn. one of them's going to be a wash, and one of them's going to be a massive unicorn. And so secretly, would they like Adam Neumann to have a massive hit? Yes. Does he have experience in real estate? Yes. Is this a great idea? It's serviceable, although what it has to do with tech is anybody's guess. But the thing that venture firms hate the most is companies that are flat. They don't go out of business. They don't fail. They just sit on the books and basically break even. Like that. That's their worst nightmare because they have to manage those investments. They prefer to have you go out of business. So I see why they bet on Adam. I get it. I mean, he's got a lot to prove, and he's got his own skin in the game. Well,
I want to tell you, I know you're not supposed to be part of the story as a journalist, but the thing kind of pisses me off because I have obviously two major business ideas that I'm having trouble getting funded by Andreessen Horowitz or any other VC. One, as you know, is the chain of chicken sushi restaurants called Salmonella Villa, to try to do for poultry what previously has done with for fish and beef carpaccio and beef tartare and so forth. And I think it's a huge untapped market, and I just can't seem to attract investors. And then, of course, as you know, I've also been spending now over a year thinking about horse vending machines, where if you need a horse, rather than going all the way the hell out into the country, bumfuck nowhere, to shop for horses, there's one right on the corner, and you put your money in the horse vending machine and it vends a horse. And I think that's
you're not confusing horse with food though, because that's
no, a horse that you ride on or put to work, and a race. It's I think it's a disruptive technology. There's some bugs technologically that need to be worked out.
From a form factor perspective, could you modify it? Me as an investor, I'm just asking. Mm-hmm. I don't want to tell you how to run your business.
No,
but could you just tweak it a little bit? Instead of horses, would you consider alpaca? Because I could be in if it was alpaca.
Steve, now look, I know you're my potential funder for, the purposes of this conversation. And I know I shouldn't, you should excuse the expression, bite the hand that feeds you. But who the fuck is going to put money into a machine for an alpaca? I'm talking about a horse vending machine. Good God.
I'm glad you came in. Leave the deck. We'll definitely go over it. And one of our interns will get back to you within a week or like 7 months. All right. Well, that was a fun little journey into alpaca vending, which, by the way, for anyone interested in the pod who wants to invest in Bob's horse vending machine or the chicken carpaccio.
Chicken sushi. Yeah.
Yeah. Also,
ground floor on that deal. I mean, you
might be an insurance issue there.
Floor.
Might be some exposure, but we will let it go. Bob, a pleasure as always. And now that we've effectively moved away from the media criticism business, I think we probably will never return there again.
From your lips to God's ears. And Brian may feel the same way. See ya.